Welcome to another edition of Drugs, Crime, and Politics, brought to you by the Drug Policy Forum of Texas. Good evening. I'm your host, Buford Terrell. With me tonight are our regulars, Bandu Nair and Clayton Jones. Good to have you both with us tonight.
Good to be back.
Thanks.
I discovered something this week that I don't know is a mark of success or a signal of really tragic failure. This show started televising in August of 1999. So in 2 months, we're entering our 10th year on the air now. Does that mean we should celebrate our longevity, or does that mean we're a total flop in bringing about any kind of reform?
I think we should celebrate the fact that we are one of the only televised shows that's actually bringing about this kind of information to the public.
Yeah.
Now, whether the government chooses to listen to it, and actually people respond to this show and go talk to their legislators, that's another thing that we really want people to push to do.
I also see a lot of response from the listeners, the watchers of the program. We're getting a lot of good questions coming in. It's not the same old people. It's new. You hear new voices.
Yeah, I've really been thrilled by the way the telephone's been jumping off the table the past couple of months. So it's becoming much more a viewer's show than it's been in the past. And
yeah, we definitely appreciate the calls. And if everyone
Go ahead,
wants to
call in now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't wait. Put that number up there, Steve.
So do we have any news to start off the night with?
Well, I wanted to talk for a minute or two about the situation on the Mexican border. I mean, every time you pick up a newspaper these days, there's a lot of discussion about the bloodbath going on along the border. What number were you telling me of police officers?
I read an article today on Google News that it said 1,350 law enforcement people have been killed so far this year along the border.
Yeah, that's a half a year. And George Bush has wanted to spend $550 million to give to the Mexican government to fight the drug cartels. But nobody wants to look at the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem is money. Estimates I've seen vary, but they've been as high that American drug trafficking contributes about $30 billion a year to the Mexican economy. That would put it as Mexico's second greatest source of foreign income, behind petroleum, but ahead of money remissions from the United States.
And how much is that?
$30 billion. Now. And it's, you know, drug dealers may be bad guys, but they don't sell drugs because they're bad guys. They sell drugs because they want money. And the money comes from American drug laws. You know, making something against the law doesn't make it unavailable.
It kind of makes it more expensive.
It makes it a lot more expensive. But in 1937, when he was testifying to Congress, Anslinger said that marijuana was really a minor problem. It was limited to a small group of black musicians, and that was about it. Now, after 70 years of that law, some figures are indicating that at least half the adults of the country have tried it at one time or another. So the law has not made it unavailable. What they have done is multiply the price, sometimes literally by thousands. Heroin, when it was legal, sold at exactly the same price as aspirin. They were manufactured by the same company, by very much the same process. Today, heroin costs about 30,000 times as much as aspirin. Same product, the only difference is it's against the law.
You know, it's funny. It's as Clay said earlier. Let's hurry up and legalize this so we can stop, sending all this money to Mexico.
Yeah.
And stop being their number 2, was it?
Yeah.
Foreign source of income. Yeah.
But the thing is, $30 billion a year is enough for a bunch of bad guys to fight over it.
Really?
And if you cut the money source off, now I'm not saying the violence would clear up overnight, it doesn't. We cut Al Capone's beer money off in 1933, and it's only been within the past 10 years or so that the American mafia has become a negligible problem. So, but at least if we quit feeding the monster, it would be weakened.
Right.
Yeah. So I really think that instead of saying let's fight harder on the border, it's another case of we need to fight smarter. We need to look at causes rather than simply reacting to symptoms.
Well, California started. They started with their marijuana,
Yeah.
medical marijuana.
Yeah.
This past year, they paid $100 million to the state in state sales tax. They had $2 billion worth of sales last year.
Yeah.
Now, the price has come down a little bit. I think it's $37.50 an eighth when I was out there.
Okay. The problem, though, is because of the federal law, the California system is a very, very poor compromise because the patients and their distributors still have to go into the black illegal market to get the marijuana that goes through the dispensaries, and they're still paying $100 an ounce or more instead of $1 or $2 an ounce.
But sometimes it's not that. I guess it's a gray market, if you will, because these are dispensaries that are working under state law. They now there's with Oaksterdam University, which Clay is our prestigious graduate of. We have people who are being able to grow their own and grow for their own dispensaries as well. Because specifically on that CNBC report, they were talking about it really is too expensive for some people to get even from the dispensary still, so they'll grow it themselves. So we have somewhat of a regulated and somewhat of a less of a legal market.
But it's
the problem is the federal law and the DEA still forces all of the California growers into the illegal market.
They do, but that doesn't necessarily drive up the prices just as it does with the completely black illegal market.
It drives it up, but not as much. Yeah.
Not as much, but I guess the point he's trying to make is that they do have a better regulated market. These are the things we should be striving for, if not outright legalization.
Well, you know, I say if it's good enough for me, it's good enough for everybody. I'm sorry. But no, California, you're a little bit wrong. I just came back and I traveled up there in Northern California. I was buying ounces of good marijuana for $200.
Yeah.
Good quality. I mean,
Is that kind of at cost prices, or is that how much it costs to kind of produce
that's
it?
up north. There's so much of it up there. Everybody's.
Yeah, but let me ask you this, Clayton. You've gone into your supermarket, and you've walked the aisles in the supermarket, and you've looked at everything from broccoli to tomatoes to esoteric spices like curry and things like this. Is there any single vegetable product in the supermarket that you pay $200 an ounce for?
No, there isn't. But there isn't.
In fact,
But I
you
tell
pay
you
$1.
what, if I go to Fiesta and I get broccoli, I'm going to pay about $1, $2 a head. But if I go to Central Market and I get broccoli, I'm for sure going to pay at least $4 a head. So there's definitely a difference in quality as well.
Well, yeah.
But what I'm saying is, the price is starting to come down in California. It's going to be a domino effect. We've got 13 states? 12.
About to be 13.
About to be 13. That's going this way. Soon, That's 26% of our country.
Mm-hmm.
Soon they're not going to be able to put the fires out everywhere they're at.
Something I've been meaning to do, and I haven't checked up yet. If we take the dozen states that have approved medical marijuana, what percentage of the population of the country do they include? I mean, you've got a big state like California and a couple of middle-sized ones, but my guess is that it's probably more than a quarter of the population now lives in medical marijuana states.
Yes.
Right.
You know, just as California had $2 billion worth of sales.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we've got a caller. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yes, I have 2 questions. My first question is, every time we have an elected official, as far as the mayor goes, he always selects a new police chief that seems to be from out of state. Are these police chiefs subject to drug testing before they're being hired? And my second question is, when the military decides to come home from Iraq after the troops are withdrawn, what's in place for them as far as being reinstated into society? Because a lot of them do have psychological problems after being trained to fight and seeing what they see in the middle of war.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As far as I know, there's no drug testing done anywhere in the Houston Police Department. As far as the rank and file officers are concerned, it's because of contractual provisions in their labor agreement. But I would assume that the police chief himself is not tested, and I don't know of any reason why he should be.
Well, I think that all the officers should be. If they're the ones enforcing the law, they should be obeying it.
Well, I'm more inclined to agree with the courts on it, that drug testing should be used only when there is a direct relationship to safety. Mm-hmm. Now, with policemen running around driving cars in hot pursuit and carrying guns and escorting kilos of coke to the evidence lockers, I'd say there are definitely safety-related reasons for supervising their drug use. But so far they've been pretty well able to block it across the country.
So no police officers are drug tested because, government, people who drive state vehicles or some such like that are drug tested on a regular basis and randomly. But police who drive the patrol cars and things like that, they're not drug tested whatsoever.
That's right. A Metro bus driver, it probably is subject to random testing.
Yes.
But a policeman or even a fireman is probably not. And it's because across the country, police departments are highly unionized. And it would require a negotiated modification of their basic labor agreement to allow drug testing, and so far the police unions have resisted it. Now,
Pretty good.
It's ridiculous.
his
It
other
reminds me of the last question of whether city council members should or should not be drug tested if they're going to vote a certain way. But yeah, his next question was a very interesting one because we've been dealing with this problem since the Vietnam War, since World War II, since who knows what war this hasn't included a problem, but especially we're seeing stories in The Nation, in Washington Post, and New York Times of soldiers coming home with PTSD and not receiving adequate treatment, not receiving adequate diagnosis, and sometimes it's these types of cases where they're not receiving adequate diagnosis in order so that perhaps they're not having to be paid benefits, disability benefits.
Well, it's also a very expensive and long-term kind of therapy.
Exactly, especially when you have guys who are coming home that are 20, 23 years old, and then they are going to have to be paid for these benefits for, the next 40 to 60 years.
They've earned them.
Yeah, exactly. They've definitely earned it. They definitely have earned the best of care that we have in hospitals. They don't deserve to have some government official as physician to tell them that they're fine and to go about their business.
Well, in Israel, they use cannabis for PTSD.
Well, I was going to say the ironic thing about this is that probably the best adjunct to talk therapy for post-traumatic stress syndrome is ecstasy, MDMA. And we've got medical studies going back to the 70s on that. And cannabis is used by the Israeli army. It works effectively, but not in this country. It's time for us to take a break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
This week in drug war history, June 1st, 1996. Noted actor and hemp activist Woody Harrelson was arrested and charged with cultivation of less than 5 marijuana plants after he planted 4 industrial hemp seeds in full view of Lee County Sheriff William Kilburn in Lexington, Kentucky. June 3rd, 1876. At the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia, America's first 100-year birthday bash, fairgoers visit the Turkish Hashish Exposition and toke up in order to enhance their fair experience. June 8, 1993, William F. Buckley in an interview said, "The amount of money and of legal energy being given to prosecute hundreds of thousands of Americans who are caught with a few ounces of marijuana in their jeans simply makes no sense. The kindest way to put it. A sterner way to put it is that it is an outrage and imposition on basic civil liberties and on the reasonable expenditures of social energy." June 11, 2001. The U.S. Supreme Court rules that the use by the police of a thermal imaging device to detect patterns of heat coming from a private home is a search that requires a warrant. June 13, 1994. The RAND Corporation releases a study finding that drug treatment is 7 times more cost-effective than law enforcement for reducing cocaine use. June 14, 2000. Best-selling author, cancer and AIDS patient, and high-profile medical marijuana activist Peter McWilliams is found dead in his Los Angeles, California home. Barred by a federal court order from using marijuana to counteract the extreme nausea caused by his AIDS drugs, McWilliams choked to death on his own vomit slumped on the bathroom floor. His federal prosecutors said they were saddened by his death. June 15, 1998. Random House publishes Mike Gray's Drug Crazy, How We Got Into This Mess and How We Can Get Out. This is Steve Nolan for the Drug Truth Network.
Well, does anybody else want to add anything on post-traumatic stress before we move on? You've got a rather irritating news story there, Clayton. Why don't you tell us about it?
I was reading on Google today, and these elderly people took their grandson in because he had a lot of problems. And the grandson was out of the home and miles away, and he got arrested for possession. And since he lived in public housing, the whole family, grandmother, grandfather, got evicted, and they're on a pension. Mm-hmm. It's just a senseless, counterproductive way that we deal with things today. These are the things that we need to call our congressmen, call our representatives. This is foolishness. We're only hurting ourselves. We're making people homeless.
Mm-hmm. Now, Buford, you actually taught property law for quite a while. I was wondering, this guy, suppose he wasn't on the lease, he wasn't a tenant on any lease or like a guest, they can still do that?
The classic case, and this one dates back into at least the 1970s in New York City. A grandmother lived in a public housing unit. She had, I think, 3 of her minor children living with her and 5 of her minor grandchildren, even though their mothers were living elsewhere. One of her daughters came over to visit one night and was arrested later in possession of something. And under the zero tolerance policy, the grandmother and all of those kids living with her were evicted on the grounds that it was up to her to supervise and control her guests. So this is not new. But insanity doesn't ever seem to be new, does it?
It's a horrible story. Where did you find this?
It was on Google News.
Yeah. Google News. And this kind of reminds me, or what you were talking about, how parents are now, and this is, okay, so they instead of seeing their kids running around and drinking or doing whatever drugs, but especially drinking other places and then driving home, they'll say, okay, kids, we know you're going to do it anyways, so come to our house. We're going to throw a party with alcohol, have it at this house. Everyone has a ride home, or everyone can crash here. But now the parents are getting convicted. They're getting sentenced for providing alcohol to minors, even though it's in their own home.
Well, that's the problem there, and it's been a problem for a long time, is that it may be one thing to let your own 16-year-old kid have a beer.
There's no law.
But when you start giving those beers to all of his 16-year-old friends that are visiting, then you've probably stepped over the line there somewhat.
Right. I guess it's just like the whole point is seeing these people who are trying to regulate and who are trying to help them go in moderation. They're not buying them kegs or anything like that, but maybe buying, I don't know, 6-packs or something. It's just
You're still back there with the high school stories.
I did this last week. Went over to my folks' house, had a few people over. I'm 26, but, it's still like to have some chaperones there.
We never did that in my day.
Well,
No, but it's a new thing that's coming out. I just read about it in some magazine.
it's been more noticed lately, but parents have been arrested and convicted on that same contributing to delinquency charge for a long time.
If I had children of that age, I would rather have them drink at my house than go out anywhere that I would rather
but
have control.
okay, let's say that you've got a 16-year-old kid, and he wants to know if he can go over to Johnny's house tonight. Do you really want to have no control over what Johnny's parents give him while he's visiting?
Well, but that's the point. You call Johnny's parents beforehand. What are you guys going to have there? You have to have some kind of rapport with those people as well. You can't just be like, yeah, sure, I have no idea who Johnny's parents are. I have no idea what their situation is, but go ahead and go. You talk to them beforehand, establish what the situation is.
I don't know anyone that lives that kind of controlled life, though.
Okay, I don't know if you have any kids or not, but if I were to, I'd certainly want to be in some kind of contact with, it's like a whole neighborhood thing.
I raised 2 kids. They've both been very successful. And, I can't go back and tell you that I knew what they were doing all of the time. And in fact, when they both got in college, would sometimes sit around the kitchen table and they'd laugh about the things they didn't let me know about. So, you can't be a control freak in life.
But I guess you're right. If you're teaching them discipline and moderation anyways, you should be trusting of what they're going to do. It looks like we've got a caller. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yes, hi. My comment is that, there's a legal issue in play, and the legal issue is that they're not allowed to drink until they're 21.
Right.
And so as parents and as responsible adults, I think our obligation should be.
So let me ask you, if you know that your kids are drinking, what would your response be? Or would you say, look, I know you're going to drink, so just do it at my house. I don't want you to do it anywhere else. Would that be your response? Or would you just be like, look, you're grounded, you're done, you're not leaving the house? I think she hung up. Okay, thanks for the call.
Well,
grounded
not
dead.
leaving the house.
It's better, to teach them that discipline and everything as opposed to kind of condoning it. At least then they'll get that sense of...
I'm speaking of my own children. I wouldn't feed any other kids.
I got that whole, you're grounded, you're dead, you're not going out anywhere. But of course I was still,
in college.
even in high school, just running off, sneaking out of the house, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just like, I know how I was. I didn't listen to a word my parents said.
Well, I want to
say
something different here. And that caller said, it's illegal, if that ended the argument. And really, that's where the argument starts. American history, all the way from throwing the tea into the harbor at Boston to helping blacks escape from the South and violating the Fugitive Slave Act, to the bonus march on Washington in the 30s, to the civil rights marches in the 60s. When laws are bad, they deserve to be broken.
Yes.
That's often the best way to reform them. Now, the other side of that is if you do it with your eyes open, because you're running the risk of jail, as David Thoreau found out when he refused to pay his tax.
David Thoreau was a philosophical anarchist, just as Thomas Jefferson was. And like I said, if the laws are immoral, then you shouldn't follow them, just like, Boston Tea Party, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't know that underage drinking is just as moral a cause as all of these previous ones.
Well, let's say I raised 2 kids. And my view of teenagers is that most teenagers experiment with 5 or 6 things. They experiment with cars, they experiment with sex, they experiment with marijuana, they may, in our end of the country at least, experiment with guns and go hunting. These are all damn risky behaviors. And frankly, if my teenagers are going to experiment with something, I'd much rather it be with marijuana than with cars or sex or alcohol. I mean, sometimes the law itself is just such an insanity that you have to stand up and say no further.
Yeah, but how many people got arrested last year for marijuana?
About 800,000.
No, I think that's stating an awful lot right there.
I think so. Now, if one person violates a law, we can kind of ignore it. If 1,000 people violate the law, we put our police to work, we try to catch them, we try to make things right. But if 800,000 a year get arrested for violating a law, it starts sounding to me like the law needs to be changed, not send the people to jail.
Exactly.
Right. It's exactly that. It's not like we have a country that's necessarily more criminal than any other country, and that yet the U.S. is the largest jailer in the world.
Yeah.
The most frequent jailer.
The largest.
Largest.
Yeah.
One out of every
Literally
99
got
people
more
are
people.
on jail or on paper of some sort.
We've literally got more people in jail than China does.
And they have 1 billion people.
But
So, I guess, is there anything else that's going on in the news here recently?
yeah, and this is something that's been going on for a long time, and I haven't talked about it much, and this is the Ibarra case that I'd like to get to after we take this call.
Let's take this call and then get to it. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you doing tonight?
Great. Did you have a question for us? Hello, caller?
No question. I just wanted to add into what you guys are talking about.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just think that if they looked at how many people are in prison right now for marijuana and how much the state is having to pay for those people, that all that money could be paying for more better schools in the state and better
much
things.
more worthy causes than just locking people up for no reason. But an absolutely great point. Thanks for calling in.
Well, that goes back to our last legislative session, that they made the law that if you're in your own county and get arrested for less than 112 grams of marijuana, that you can get a written citation and then you have to appear in court within 2 days. There's only one county that's following that law, and that law was designed to relieve the stress that's put on all the county jails and the state jails.
Not only the jails, the police forces as well. It's time for another break, so we'll take a break and come back and talk about that.
The jury right to say not guilty is an essential safeguard against injustice, which dates back to English common law and the founding of the United States. Jurors in early 19th century America routinely refused to enforce the Alien and Sedition Act, and they rejected the Fugitive Slave Act. Jurors in early 20th century America refused to enforce alcohol prohibition. The injustices of the war on drugs have become obvious to many Americans. In cases where the law, prosecutorial excesses, and the likely sentence seem manifestly unfair, jury nullification ensures the citizen juror a more equal status with those who write the laws. Please visit the Fully Informed Jury Association, FIJA.org. Please keep such decisions private. Nullification is your right, your responsibility, perfectly legal and just.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're watching Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
The Dean looks serious.
That's Tommy Chong.
That's right, that is. We're back. Before the break, I was going to mention the Ibarra case, which has been going through the courts, and who knows what the total bill to the county is. It's up above $5 million now and could go as high as 10. But what happened in that case was some sheriff's deputies were making a drug arrest. Some of the neighbors were taking pictures of the cops making the arrest. The cops turned around, in effect assaulted the people, took their cameras, and charged them with interfering with a police officer or something else. Destroyed the pictures. The two brothers that were arrested sued. They got a judgment of a settlement of about $1.7 million plus about the same amount in attorney's fees. But then it seems like while the case was pending, the sheriff's deputies were following the two guys around, surveilling them, filming them, to see if they could catch them in something else to bring pressure on the lawsuit, and that's now adding to. Part of the problem is there's no stopping the drug use, so the police tend to go overboard and out of hand with how they act to it. These drug laws have had a horrible effect on police forces and the way police in this country operate.
Yeah, and yet I'm sure there was no record of whether the police over that period of time had any other types of cases where they were never under surveillance if they were, abusing powers or abusing their other people.
Yeah.
Looks like we've got a call, so we'll take that. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Hello, Bindu. This is Dean calling in.
Hi, Dean. How are you?
I'm well. I'm unable to see this channel tonight, but I did want to call in and thank the many folks who had pledged to our show on KPFT. We more than met our goal this time around.
That's fantastic.
But I also wanted to talk about the need for us to more fully examine this policy of drug prohibition, what it's, quote, done for our society and truly for the rest of the world. In that regard, we're looking at the situation through the eyes of Mr. Neil Pierce. He's a writer for the Washington Post, and he is our guest this week on the Century of Lies program, and he was primarily talking about President Bush's effort to give $500 million this year and maybe $1.5 billion to the good folks of Mexico to stop that very violent and deadly war down there, which hinges on our desire to prohibit drugs. We also have an interview I did today with Mr. Terry Nelson. He just returned from Iraq. He was working as a border security agent over there, but he has 33 years as Customs, Border, and Air Interdiction Officer for the United States. He's a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition who feels that we must end this. We must quit funding our enemies, criminals worldwide, if you will. Also had an interview this week with Mr. Paul Armentano. He's a deputy director, I believe, of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. We had an in-depth discussion about the fact that marijuana, the cannabinoids within marijuana can be useful in the treatment of certain cancers, and especially for the type of cancer that Senator Kennedy has, the glioma. And we did quite a bit of discussion about that. I did some interviews with Mr. Bruce Merkin. He works for the Marijuana Policy Project, and we were talking about the various measures and ballot initiatives that are going on across the country. You can tune into all of this information at my website, which is drugtruth.net. You can also hear us every week, Tuesdays from 11:30 to noon. We do our Century of Lies program, and Wednesdays from 11:30 to noon we do Cultural Baggage. Every day, Monday through Friday, you can hear at 4:20 p.m. the 420 Drug War News, and that's all available from KPFT Houston 90.1 FM. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to your viewers.
Definitely.
Okay.
And I was going to ask, we were thinking about this earlier. I know MPP has a lot of projects right now. They're trying to push a lot of medical marijuana initiatives. They're working on them. Do we have any states that are coming up that may be the next medical marijuana state?
Well, they do have, I'm drawing a blank on which ones, but yes, there certainly are a couple that are moving forward. One, I think, Michigan was denied. I don't know what happened. They didn't get the requisite number of signatures. I'm not sure.
Either that or it was vetoed, and then Massachusetts has another one?
Massachusetts
is a straight decriminalization.
It's on a ballot.
Okay.
So one I thought very important that's happened that I heard about in the last few days is that in California, the state legislators are now trying to form a situation whereby the California law enforcement officers will no longer assist the DEA in their busts of the dispensaries.
That sounds
Fantastic.
great.
That's
All right.
great.
Thanks, Dean.
Might I add that recently Dean did some rather insightful interviews with both of the candidates for the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and those are available on his website. So
I haven't seen that.
yeah. But something else that's come up, we've got this talk about several states that are moving forward with medical marijuana issues. And one thing I've noticed reading the news reports on them is that in almost every case, the legislator sponsoring the bill attributes his interest to an in-person interview with a medical marijuana patient. So, Clayton, this puts the ball strictly on your plate that every member of the legislature and every congressman should get at least one personal visit from an articulate patient. So,
I have tried to see a lot of the congressmen in the area.
You're not the only medical marijuana patient in Texas.
Well, and
no,
he's also not the only one who's been visiting offices.
Oh,
so
no,
we definitely need to get more people
all I'm
out
saying
there.
is people are doing this. I mean, I'm not the only one. I know Marcia down in Sugar Land, she's been doing it, and she's been traveling around to the different
If you go to any one of those Texas for medical marijuana lobby days that they had, they would get people from all over the state to converge, and those are just the ones who were able to make it to Austin for that one day. So, but I mean, we're not saying that, we have enough by any means.
Oh,
we
no,
definitely
we need more.
Yeah. And we're going to have an upcoming show that's going to be fantastic. And we're going to show the exact rapport that and the things that you should say between legislator and patient or person in office. All right. Hi. Welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
And I also lately heard something about New Jersey, I believe it was. But I think the next administration, actually, no matter which one it is actually going to decriminalize medical use, or at least under that guise. Look, back in the 60s it was used almost in open rebellion, but now I think that pendulum has moved to the other side. It's more or less allowed in jail in order to keep order. I think the most interesting use of marijuana is its most historic, and that is that of the peace pipe.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah, thanks, caller.
I'm saying, we can use it to totally different ways, or it has been used at different times in totally different ways.
Or what about as for the sails for ships or parachutes in the form of hemp?
Absolutely. I mean, it could be done completely commercially, and well, I think that's kind of where we've been for a little while, at least in some regions.
So are you saying that, God forbid, even if John McCain won, that he would also decriminalize?
I like I said, medical use, but, you know, that might not be the entire truth of it. Yeah, I do. I think we're hitting a point in time, you know, people might be upset with high gasoline prices, so this might make them not all that mad.
Make hemp oil.
Yeah,
Well, let's talk about, thank you, caller. Let's talk about those high gasoline prices. I think there's no doubt that world oil supplies have probably peaked. There's not going to be any great big bundle of oil under the ocean to pull us out. And we do know that hemp could be a primary source of biofuels, both cellulosic ethanol and biodiesel from the seeds. I think it's time for the hempsters to start making themselves heard in the alternative fuel debate more.
But not only that, it's not like hemp products, even like clothing and food, etc. They're not illegal here. It's just illegal to grow it. So why should we keep on buying these exports and paying other countries for that? Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, did you have a question or comment for us?
Yes, I was watching Texas cable news, and they were talking about the fact that up in Travis County, where Austin is, that the Travis County Sheriff's Department were not busting people that had marijuana, you know, if they pulled them over, but that the Austin City Police were. And I wondered if these guys on the show had heard about that.
Yeah, actually, we mentioned that earlier. Thanks for the call. We're going to address that now, but you had mentioned that earlier, and this is...
Yeah, well, I think we're talking about two different things. City of Austin
versus the
the
sheriff.
policemen there are busting people for marijuana, but the sheriff themselves are not.
Right.
Well, the way the law works, for any governmental entity, a city or a county or whatever, that governmental organization has to ask the administrative judges for the judicial district for a policy to carry out the law, and it's only after the court administrative officers approve it that they can use the citation instead of arrest. Now, to me, a crucial thing here, and without even worrying about the human cost of the guy that loses his job because he's in jail for 2 days and can't make bond, in Houston at least, we've got a horrible shortage of police officers now.
Yes.
The police department's way over budget. It takes, according to the best studies I've seen, about 15 minutes to write out a citation and process it, as opposed to 3 to 4 hours to process an arrest. That would mean every 4 marijuana cases in which a citation was used instead of an arrest would in effect create another whole patrolman on the streets of Houston.
For 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Right, not to mention the cost of arresting someone. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
I have a question. Is it reasonable? I was reading in the Fort Bend Star where the Fort Bend County Jail is outsourcing inmates as far as 500 miles away from their families and what have you. Is that pretty much reasonable in Texas?
Okay, now
Thanks for the call.
we've also got the same thing in Harris County.
Right.
With the Harris Sheriff's Department shipping inmates to Louisiana. Now,
That's Harris County right here.
yeah, the question is, who do you want in your jail? Do you want people being held before their trials come up for possession of marijuana or small hot check charges, or do you want serious violent criminals in jail? And think about it. If all of the pretrial nonviolent misdemeanors were released on their own recognizance as they used to be, or given a citation, if we used alternative sentencing for drug possession offenses, I suspect that we would more than cure the jail overcrowding situation. And I know one of the complaints we've been hearing is from families who find that they cannot drive 300 or 400 miles each way to visit their family members that have been deported to a gulag in Louisiana.
Well, they're negotiating for 900 more.
Yeah. And it's I keep coming back to the word insanity because that's all it is.
Yeah.
You know, I've always thought people that need to be in jail are the people that we need to be protected from. Somebody with a plant, I don't need to be protected from.
Okay.
And especially they don't need to be protected from themselves. That's another philosophical anarchism law. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Buford a question.
Okay.
Whenever you have the rallies to stand together and march for the decriminalization of marijuana, it's very poor advertisement, I think, when the rallies are taking place. I often hear about the rallies after they're over.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be more magazine, newspaper, or radio advertisement to bring more support to the rallies. And I'd love to see the decriminalization of marijuana. I think it's a very beneficial and harmless drug. I'd love to be able to see the day when I can walk into the store and...
Well, go talk to your legislator about it.
Right.
Especially if you can't make it to the rallies, you can certainly make it to your legislator's office any time of day, Monday through Friday.
I think that I can give a pretty quick answer to him, and that's money. I mean, advertising costs
these
money.
are all nonprofit organizations.
And most of the people actively involved in reform do it in their spare time. It's not like a political party with fat cats and lobbyists financing it. You know, it would be nice if we could get 30-second ads on all of the TV things for 420, but there's just no money for that kind of thing.
So all they can do is keep on watching this show, keep on watching your independent and free media, and especially some websites they can check out, HoustonNormal.org, DPFT.org. Clay, do you have any more?
There's Americans for Safe Access, which is a wonderful group. They're doing a lot of good things. MPP, Sensible Drug Policy. There's just so many. And you can keep informed just by going to Google News and looking up marijuana. I mean, today I went through 16 pages.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of the people that are getting arrested, they're getting arrested by accident because they had an inspection station that was set up for the Memorial Day weekend. They arrested 8 people on possession of small amounts in one town, and that was their headline.
Well, one of the things that's troubling, when you've got a law that's ignored by as many people as the marijuana laws are, it becomes a source of abusive treatment and discrimination. You have policemen both that will take a kid's joints from him, send him home alone. On the other hand, you have the policeman that will use it as a harassment charge for someone that talks back to them. So there's no fairness, there's no equality, and it's time we take a break again.
Sometimes when we have a problem, we only use one tool. It works pretty good most of the time, so we keep on using it. Pretty soon, when your only tool is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. With prisons overflowing with nonviolent drug offenders, it's time to try some new tools. Drug prohibitionists beat the drum for more jail time, but that has been a self-defeating policy. If someone has a problem with drugs, they need medical help, not incarceration. The drug war is doing more harm than good, and it's time for a change. By reducing the consequences of prohibition, we can deal with the real issues involved in a rational drug policy. There are better tools. If you would like to help reduce the harm caused by the drug war, please visit our website at dpft.org.
Okay, maybe a little of the money I spend on marijuana supports terror and violence.
Right.
And that's because marijuana is illegal.
Exactly.
When I buy a beer, that doesn't support terror because beer is legal, right?
Now you've got it.
So what you're saying is if we make marijuana legal and regulate it like beer, that wouldn't support violence.
Did I say that?
Hi, welcome back to Drugs, Crime, and Politics here at Houston Media Source, sponsored by Drug Policy Forum of Texas. We've been talking a lot about different laws, ways that you can change laws, ways to decriminalize. We've been talking about medical marijuana. And I wanted to mention something that's a little bit on a sadder note, but it is something that's definitely led to a good cause. Rachel Hoffman was an undergraduate student at Florida State University, and March 8th of this year, she was arrested for small, minor amounts of possession, like very minor amounts of possession. It was just for her own individual use or whatnot. And without any consultation, she was, of course, threatened, thrown the book at her. You know, you're going to get federal prison time, you're going to get all kinds of jail time. So without any legal consultation, without her even being able to speak to her, any type of legal advice or her parents or anything, she was asked to wear a wire and go undercover and tried to purchase narcotics. She was given $13,000 to try to buy 1,500 pills of X, and then some amount of cocaine as well, and 2 handguns. This is a person who's probably never touched a gun and probably never touched that amount of drugs in her life. Unfortunately, her body was found several days later. We don't know any of the details, but she, obviously, this is a drug bust gone wrong. Obviously, this is something she was not prepared for. So her parents have started, along with Students for Sensible Drug Policy, the Rachel Morningstar Foundation, which would require by law legal consultation before any type of drug informant activity or anything like that, and it would require consent, or it would require just basically a third party's knowledge of it before any undercover activity and decriminalization.
Yeah. The first case of that kind that drew considerable knowledge was several years ago in California, in which a young man, a minor, was arrested on a simple possession charge. The police pressured him into going undercover to make a buy. Didn't let him talk to his parents, didn't let him consult a lawyer, say, you've got to make up your mind right now. He was killed when the transaction blew up. But if you think about it, what good do police informants do? And we might take another local case with Roger Clements and his trainer on the use of steroids. Now, I don't know whether Roger Clements is lying or telling the truth. I have no way of knowing. I am about 98% certain his trainer is lying because he turned informant and he cooperated with the police to get what amounts to at least about a 90% reduction in his sentence. And there is no way you can trust anyone who's talking under those circumstances.
Right. Exactly.
So-called victimless crimes or crimes of consent lead to nothing but corrupt enforcement.
It's like snitches. How can you trust the information of a snitch when their own necks are on the line depending on what they say or what they inform you of?
I'll give you a hint. If you're ever on a jury and there's a police snitch involved, he's lying. And I mean, that's just a solid rule.
Okay, jury, listen, we've got a phone call. Okay. Welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yes. I was just wondering, did you think it would be okay if they were to legalize like a certain amount of marijuana?
Okay.
So, well, that's decriminalization. Yeah, thanks for the call.
I think it should be legalized across the board, regulated and controlled and taxed.
My feeling on it is that the drugs are there, they're available, people are going to use them. That the problem with the law is that it's a prohibition law. And the more hurdles you put in front of people, the more you encourage them to turn to a black market. And I don't care if you're talking about prostitution, or drugs, or alcohol, or cigarettes, or gambling. One famous case in English history was a ban on importing French watchworks to be assembled in cases. It all leads to the same thing. Violence, corruption, death, serious damage to the legal system, and no shortage of French watches or marijuana or cocaine or prostitutes. Prohibition does not work.
Doesn't, never has, never will.
And I don't know if I can make it any clearer than that.
I know. I wonder if we could challenge, just as they have a Dean and DPFT used to have a challenge, if anyone would debate them, if anyone can prove of a prohibition that's worked. There's a small country that has, I don't know if they've made it legal, but they've essentially eliminated all cigarettes from their country.
I don't know. The Soviet Union not only tried to ban Western videotapes, but they actually engineered a tape format to be used in all Soviet Union video recorders that could not show European or American tapes.
Oh my gosh.
Guess what? It didn't stop the smuggling of American movies into Russia.
Or American VCRs, perhaps.
Yeah.
We've got a call. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yes, how you doing today?
Good.
It's fine.
I know you're close to going off the air, but I just have a comment of, I think it'd be a wonderful day when we're able to walk into the corner store, maybe buy a newspaper, a large iced tea, and see the legalized Acapulco Gold next to the Miller Lite.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your comment.
And I think that
We've got about 30 seconds to wrap it
I'm
up.
going to say, just remember this. It used to be in this country you bought beer from Al Capone. Now you buy beer from Anheuser-Busch. Which system works better? And do either of you want to get a last word in?
We've had so many callers, and you guys have such great responses. Please, if you really want to make a difference, start calling into your legislators' offices now. So
Really?
thanks so much, and we'd love to see you in 2 weeks.
That is just so important.
Yeah.
And I really see a breakthrough chance, even at the federal level, in this coming session.
Obama says that he is going to propose legislation to allow all states to have medical marijuana.
Yeah.
Right.
For that reason, I hope that he gets in there, one of many.
Yeah.
So.
And we hope to see you guys once again 2 weeks from now, Wednesday at 8:30. Thanks to Houston Media Source.
Okay.
All right. Yay.
Present policy of drug prohibition is hopeless. It is hopeless. It will never get better. Literally, victory today is being defined as slowing down the pace of defeat.
We ought to listen to science and medicine when it comes to whether marijuana or any other substance has a medical benefit.
The fact that marijuana is a less dangerous drug.
we're going full-blown into a program that has failed and failed every other time we've tried it. Please point out one success in 30 years of an eradication program that has stopped drugs from coming in this country. Point out one success, because I review